Welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, and transformational coaches being the change they seek in the world. If you'd like to be featured on our podcast to share what you're contributing to making the world a better place for us all, please go to www.jointheuworldorder.com. Be sure to like and follow our podcast for the latest episodes. Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. I'm your host, Jill Hart, and today we have with us Andrea Anderson. Andrea coaches parents of kids and teens whose brains are wired differently. She helps them connect more deeply with their kids, create more peace in their family, and ultimately helps their kids to thrive. Welcome to the show, Andrea. It's really great to have you here. I'm looking forward to this conversation a lot.
Oh, thank you, Jill. I really appreciate being here and sharing with your audience. So thank you for this opportunity.
So how did you get started in all of this? It's kind of like, I feel like we're just jumping in
Yeah,
the middle of a
right.
story.
Yeah, and definitely there's a story. There usually is, right? So basically, my sons, I have two sons. They're now 20 and 23.
Mhm.
When they were younger, I sensed something was a little bit different in terms of their behaviors, the way they were showing up. And I didn't have for a while any set label or whatever have you, but I knew and I sensed that something was off. It was sometimes significant calmness to significant like outbursts to anxiety to one son would crawl under the table when there are too many people at the table when we're out to dinner with other people. So there was just different things that were happening.
Mhm.
And from my experiences of honestly many times having a hard time feeling like I could rein them in, I could get them to follow societal rules, school rules as they start to get a little older, I was like, oh my gosh. And honestly, I, through this process, many times felt like a bad mom because I had the kids that would get wild. And I went to therapists, I went to counselors, I read books, I read more books, I started to look online. I did so many things, went to doctors. And over time, I started to put the pieces together, not just what was going on for them. They had different neurodiversities. But what I really started to do was start to see how to help them in different ways so that they could start to move through some of these challenges and be able to handle themselves in a different way, be able to show up in a way where they were calmer, where they were able to handle things in life that there are societal rules, whether we like them or not. There's some things we just need to generally conform to. And then there's a lot of shades of gray that I also didn't realize before that it's okay to not be exactly like everybody else and the pleasing kid and the just right kid. So there was a lot on that journey, but the bottom line is through my experience of having a hard time with my kids, honestly, and then a hard time with myself because I realized how I was showing up made a huge difference on how they were showing up. It doesn't mean I controlled how they showed up, meaning if I was feeling horrible or not showing up in a way that I loved, it was hugely impacting and horribly impacting them. It just meant that if I learned how to notice myself, how I was parenting, how what my energy was like, it made a huge difference on how they then showed up. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense to me. Like I said, I had 5 kids and 3
Yeah.
of them were boys. And I totally get that. I'm of the opinion that everyone is neurodiverse in one way or another. And
Mhm.
I love there's the societal norms, but then there's this huge area of grays, and it's okay to be different. We don't all have to be the same, but being able to equip parents with the ability to recognize how to corral your kids when you need to, but
Mhm.
allow them to be themselves and explore what's interesting to them and not make them feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not fitting into that round hole like you might want them to. Because I this is what I found when I was raising kids is there was outside pressures. There's all these outside pressures and people that meanwhile in a lot of cases and sometimes not so much, they
Mhm.
want your kids to behave a certain way, and when your kids aren't behaving that way, then there's obviously something wrong with you as a parent.
Without a doubt. Yep. Yep.
And
Yeah.
it sounds to me like you're really helping parents get a handle on that issue, to know
Yeah.
themselves and be confident in themselves and be able to say, I don't know what your problem is, but it's fine.
You got it. Yeah, that is part of it. There's so many different pieces to it, right? But that is one of the layers. That's one of the components to when I support parents. It's a matter of helping parents, and often it's mom, helping mom realize
Mhm.
it's okay. Like having a higher level of acceptance for their kids, but also of themselves. Because that was one of the challenges I needed to meet along the way. It was, oh, I have two kids, two boys with different neurodiversities, right? Whose brains are wired differently. And I like to say that because it feels a little bit lighter to me. Like it's like it can come and go. It can, it's not so stationary as a certain type of neurodiversity. But that aside, it was like, yeah, I met so many situations personally where moms would judge me, moms would judge my kids, teachers would judge me, teachers would judge my kids. And I knew, I'm like, this is not an accident. This is for me to decide that I'm okay. I'm good enough and I'm okay regardless of whether my kids behave a certain way. And I'm okay regardless of whether those parents want to be around me or want to be around my kids. It
Mhm.
took some connecting to an inner strength that we all have that we don't always tap into because we're brought up to be pleasers. Most people are, right? So if we're
Most women for
pleasing and
sure.
trying to do the things to have everybody like us, we're completely outside of ourselves. So along come two kids who have neurodiversities, and it's like, Andrea, you can keep trying to be that pleaser, or you can choose to connect with your kids, learn to be okay with your kids, support your kids in the best way you can, and teach them to follow their hearts and teach them to go off and fly versus keep trying to make these teachers and parents okay with me and them. It's exhausting to do that. And I did it for a long time. But it kept my kids and myself more stunted in the possibilities for us, right? So to just quickly return to what I was saying before, when you were asking me about how I got into this because I had a journey with my kids that helped me transform as a human and a woman, and that helped them transform as kids, as little mini kids and then adults, right? And this was because of doing some inner work. This was because of eating different foods and changing the way we ate so that our nervous systems were more relaxed and more at peace. So I could show up calm instead of half the time because something was going off in my house that didn't feel comfortable, right? Or crossed the line. So I could settle and see it differently. And then the same things for my kids. Their nervous systems, what was going on internally was more relaxed. So rather than not being able to sit still the way it was at a very high level for a while, it decreased, right? And then I looked around and made sure they're in a school where they're outside a lot. And there are other pieces that came into play, but I started to see them for who they were, accept them, but still support them to keep growing. And likewise for myself. And from that, where I'm going to with this is that from that, I then in turn started to eventually coach moms and support them with their kids who had, different things going on. And I've had different renditions of my business, but a lot of it has had to do with parents who have kids whose brains are wired differently, hence because of my journey. And the things I learned that got me there quicker, and the things that I learned that took longer or didn't really weren't as helpful. Kind of erase those out of the program I have. And now it's all let's fly. Let's see this happen and help their kids to improve themselves too.
I would imagine that you get results for people pretty quickly
Yeah.
because it's a lot of it is like your diet's huge. But
Yep.
there are some tools that I know of that you can implement into your life that they're simple, but
Yes.
they work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. There's like, I have a giant tool belt, so to speak, of tools, right? And there's going to be some people who resonate with certain tools over the others. Food really does, that's one that can make a big shift very quickly if somebody's open to shifting food, right? If they're not, then I have this other approach where we just introduce a couple different foods that are to their liking, and eventually, as we bring in one new food, two new foods, so on and so forth through the weeks, within 6 months' time, there's a lot new foods in their diet, and a lot of the old ones, not all, but a lot of them have been crowded out enough that they and their kids, if they're willing to participate, but especially parents, because we start there, are now showing up differently, are now interacting differently with their kids, communicating differently, genuinely okay with something that might have created a big problem in the house before. They now can be more chill about it, understand it, talk about it, handle it so differently with a lot of acceptance versus a lot of judgment and anger and frustration. And that already changes. And yeah, within 6 months' time, we can see so many things shift that a lot of times I have moms saying, well, I shifted my food. I ended up losing weight. My skin feels better. And all these side things that aren't really what we're going after, but come from changing your food. And then also how she shows up with her spouse. It's like, oh, I feel better in my body now. Like all these domino pieces that come just simply from focusing on how can I help myself show up differently with my kids, do some mindset work, conscious parenting work, um, nervous system work, all simple. They sound like big words that could mean something bigger than it actually is. Like you
I-
said, simple, simple things. Yeah.
that work. You look at them. EFT is one that
Yeah.
I lean on heavily. You
Hmm.
think this is the dumbest thing? I'm just tapping on parts of my face.
Right, right.
How can this possibly work? But it does. Even
Hmm.
if you don't know what it is, if you just like tap on your
Yeah.
collarbone,
Yeah.
you can shift. Breathing's another thing.
Yeah.
We all
Right.
breathe, but we really don't breathe intentionally. And
Yes.
learning to breathe intentionally change your whole life.
I agree. I agree. And thank you for bringing up some of those ways that we can just gently, quickly shift in moments, sometimes just a few minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Yeah, because for me, one of the overarching themes is I believe I said this to begin with, but I'm just going to say it again in case I didn't say it before. And that is to me, as we allow ourselves to feel calmer, we can support our kids in a different way. We can support ourselves and we get very different results in our life. And some of those ways are food, like I already, went into a little bit, and specific foods that will really help to settle our nervous systems more so over others. And then there's certain foods that will agitate our nervous systems and have us like yelling and freaking out more easily. So it's good to know both. Um, and then there's also things like honoring what you really feel. That
Mhm.
sounds like, well, what do you mean by that? Basically, it's a matter of what you were saying. It's stopping when you feel triggered by your kid, by your spouse, by something going on in the house. And it's just like taking a moment. Maybe you can't stop in the middle of what you're doing, but you realize, okay, you almost set a timer. 10 minutes, I'm going to go to the bathroom and I'm going to sit by myself, or I'm going to go sit in that room that nobody goes, or whatever it is. You find your spot and then you go. And if you feel like crying, you cry. If you are angry, I went through a period where I was very angry because my kids were rough for a while. And I would sometimes be caught in that roughness, shall we say. And I was like, what? How could this be? How could my kids that I'm bringing up do this? And so I would go into a room, and one of the ways I honored how I honestly felt was I took a towel. I was in the bathroom, and I would whip it on the side of the tub because I had anger in me at the time. I
Mhm.
had a lot of anger. I was angry at myself, I think, for how I was showing up, even though it wasn't so bad. That was my perception of myself. And I was angry with how my boys were acting and behaving. I was angry at the lot in life. I felt like I was angry. So I took that towel. And when I get triggered by something that happened by somebody in my home, I would go in that bathroom and whip the towel on the side of the tub. It made a cracking sound. And I didn't even know I needed to hear it, but brought some level of satisfaction to me in an odd way, right? It was like, ugh, I was keeping everybody and everything safe around me, but I had an energy that needed to come out. So there might not be anybody else listening to this that has those feelings. I think there probably are, but there might not be. But if you're
Oh,
not
I'm
in the
sure they
anger
are.
category, if you're not in the anger category, you'll be in the sad category. The woe's me, poor's me victim. I would toggle between the two, honestly. And now I don't feel, by the way, just to add this bit, I'm not as angry. I allowed that stuff to move through me that was stuck, and a lot of personal judgments, all those things I've shifted. So now there's a different sense about things. But regardless, anger or sadness are typically what come out when we're triggered. And in that bathroom or in that little quiet space in your car, wherever you are, then feel that if that's what you feel. If it's sadness, then you cry, you cry. Then you do what you were talking about. You breathe, you check in. It's real simple. You just check in to see what's actually going on in your body. Okay, take a couple breaths and then you just check to see, okay, what's going on. You might feel your heart feeling really tight and constricted, might feel like there's a little pain in your heart, back of your neck is tight. Just notice it and call it out. So breathe a little bit more and then just call it out. Okay, and just like this. Okay, I feel tightness in my neck. Okay, I feel my heart feels tight, my heart's burning. And just do that for like a minute or two. So you're moving, you're feeling what's going on in your body. You're not doing anything about it except noticing it and calling it out. I take it to another level. You'll already start to feel relief by doing that because A, you expressed what you needed to move out of your body and you didn't judge it, you just did it to get it out. So it's not stuck in there causing problems later on, right? And then beyond that, you then can ask yourself, what is it you want me to know? Because anger, all emotions have something they want you to know, right? Happy is real easy. We're like, "Ooh, this feels good. You want me to feel good." But the thing is, when it's anger or sadness, there's a message there. And it's usually because we're thinking something fearful, an incorrect thought about ourselves or our kids or somebody that we're upset with who triggered us. And when we hear what it is, it brings a little bit of relief to us. So now we walk away from that 5 minute, 10-minute session with ourselves, so to speak, that time to just honor what we felt, already shifting into a different space, a different energy. And it's actually more of the truth. It's more of what's true for us. It's more of what we're meant to be connecting to, more of how we're meant to show up. It's just we got so busy. We got so busy trying. We got so busy thinking we had to please people. We got so busy with all these other things, all the minutia, that we lost ourselves and the truth about what's going on for us and our kids. That little space and time helps you to start to shift. When you start to make this a habit, you as a human, as a woman, start to really feel differently, more empowered, more, even just more at peace is what you get. And now when we're at peace and one of the kids freaks out, you're going to still freak out sometimes, but it's going to be less and less, or you're going to be able to shift very quickly. So this is another taste of a tool without going through all the tools. That's just another tool to bring us into a different space so we can connect more deeply with our kids and create different results for all of us.
You talk about I would call them boundaries, but I know with my own kids, I had a system for discipline.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this before, and we had known consequences for certain behaviors that I do not tolerate. I don't like liars. When people come to me and lie to my face, you're going to have consequence for that. And it's going to be
Yeah,
something you really don't want because I don't want you lying to me.
gotcha.
Um, if you tell me the truth about something and I don't like it, it's not, you're not going to suffer that really bad consequence. We'll talk about it.
Gotcha.
And, but, sometimes, like, I know my kids would, because they're boys, they would fight. They would
Mm-hmm.
do things, and you're just like, you get caught up in the energy, and the tendency is to just like scream at them to
Yeah,
stop.
been there.
Because you're just
Been
like,
there. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
all do it. Um, but if you've got some of these tools, I also know that it's easier if you approach approach your kids with, okay, we used to use the 10 commandments. These are the 10 commandments, and we're going to adhere to these. These are the things that have big consequences. Everything else is the gray area, and you're allowed to have your boundaries around what you feel about these things. And
Mhm.
I have my boundaries about what I feel about them, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
The Big Ten, we're not gonna discuss. You're just gonna get the consequence. And I'm
Mhm.
not gonna administer. I used to use the belt on my kids. I'll be honest with you. I had two boys. My husband was never home, and I, you're either going to get control of them or they're going to be off wandering the Tulies. And they knew it. I whacked them once with it. It wasn't like I beat them, and I never hit them in anger, ever. It
Mhm.
was just, this is the consequence for And they knew it was coming. I mean, it wasn't like this is a surprise. Mom's beating you with the belt because she's mad. It's
Mhm,
like,
mhm,
I lied to you. You caught me. I know this is happening. And they
mhm.
would always, at the end, be like, okay.
Right.
There wasn't a lot of crying and histrionics about it. It was just, I'm sorry. This is this is the consequence.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, I have a really good relationship with my kids at this point too. I
mhm.
mean, it wasn't like admitting this on something that's going on the air is probably not a good thing to do, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it worked for me. But
Mhm,
again, if you don't have the tools to not discipline your children in a calm state
mhm.
with an intention that they learn a lesson from it so that you
Yeah.
don't have to do this like
Mhm,
ever,
mhm.
um, then you wander into the toolies where you're just like you're going to end up causing more problems than you're going to solve, and you're going to feel bad yourself because you don't have any control over the situation. And I
Right.
think that's where a lot of parents like end up frustrated, end up
Mhm,
feeling bad about themselves.
mhm. Right, right. Yeah, right. And for me, I basically would try to understand what was going on for my kids and where they were coming from,
Mhm,
because a lot of times my quick thought was, why are they doing that? How could they be doing that? But I wasn't putting myself in their shoes. I was
mhm,
quickly just getting mad if they were listening or not. It was like very black and white. Are they listening or not? And when I shifted into some shades of gray, I got to put myself in the space. This took time. It's not like this was a overnight,
uh-huh,
oh, I'm going to go from being brought up with punishment to now doing this a little differently. And it was, they still had consequences, but there was the space of, well, let me try to understand what's going on for them. Because if I can see this differently and see, oh, they were doing this not from being, being vindictive or this or that, but it was really from this other thing. Now I understand that other thing. Now, how can I help them knowing that they maybe have a tendency to do this because of this other thing? Does that make sense?
mhm,
And then supporting them from there. Um, so yeah, so and then sometimes it was a matter of, well, no, you know, there is going to be the consequence. Like when my son was younger, this is a very minor thing. And this was really hard for me. And I still don't know if I loved what I did in those moments. You know how you sometimes reflect and go, yeah,
mhm,
that wasn't a good idea. But or maybe it was okay. I don't know. So, but he he was in the space of forgetting things a lot, right? And forgetting things for school. And then I helped to enable him by coming to the rescue with, oh, you forgot your violin, I'll just deliver it to school. Oh, you forgot that, I'll just deliver it to school. You forgot your lunch again. And so I wasn't really holding him accountable, right?
mhm,
So he worked on this project. It was like like something he made with his hands, and he spent weeks and weeks building. And the day he was to bring it to school, when all the other classrooms for the whole school, they were in a small school, but the whole school would
mhm,
walk through and they'd exhibit what they created. He forgot that, and I didn't drive it to school that morning. It really hurt my heart, but I was like, oh, if I just, this is a big one, Andrea, but if you bring that project to school, there's nothing in him that's motivated to keep looking after his things, to try to not, to try to rein himself in with this forgetfulness. Because sometimes there is literally something wired in the brain where it's harder to remember things. And sometimes
mhm,
it's a bit of a habit. And I sensed it was a habit, right? This is where, as moms, you start to cue into your kids. And when we're calm enough, we can start to read them and understand them differently than if we're like stressed and trying to do 25,000 things. And you're not, it's hard to read them because we think we're reading them, but really we're reading ourselves. We're just a mess, like no offense, but I was there. So, and so I didn't deliver the project to school that day. And sometimes it still brings a twinge to my heart. Like, how could you do that? But then there's the other part of me that was like, it was okay. He lived. He was okay. He felt bad. He felt embarrassed. And to this day, now when he goes somewhere, he travels a lot. He lives overseas. Um, and he's like, okay, do I have everything? He's like going through the list, and he'll sometimes pack ahead of time. So it's just these things can shift somebody, right? And they're the tricky things to do sometimes as well. But it's a boundary, right? It's a
Yeah,
boundary.
it's
And
a
it
boundary.
wasn't a punishment, but it was a boundary. So I
Mhm,
understand what you're saying, and we all have different ways of getting there. Um, and this is what worked for me in those moments, right? And so,
mhm.
but I also am a big proponent of what I said before, connecting with your kids, seeing who they are, where they're coming from, and then helping them from there. We might have been raised one way. We might even raise one child this other way, but this kid is in a different place and needs something different. Let's understand that and then work from there. And sometimes when we let them take the lead on things, almost always, they're going to show us what they need and what's going to help them be in the space of what would support them best. So I won't go into more
So you can
stories.
even ask them what
Yes.
they think the consequence should be. And
Yeah.
you'd be surprised. Sometimes it's like way worse than you would have thought. Well,
Yeah.
maybe we won't go that far.
Yeah.
I had
So
something a little less severe in mind.
mm,
But I think your program is a necessary um bit of coaching that every parent needs on some level or another, whether your kids are their brains are wired differently or not. I
mhm.
personally I believe they're all wired differently. We are
Yeah,
all
I do
wired
too.
differently.
Yeah, without a doubt. There is really, we're not meant to fit in boxes. We just try to fit ourselves in boxes because that's kind of how it's been done uniformly before us, right? Parents did that, grandparents did that. So it's just passed down and it's literally imprinted in our nervous system to try to do that, to try to fit in those boxes. But it was never a good idea for any of us, right? There's some people who sort of naturally fit in there because it's actually an expression of who they are. And then there's so many others of us that no, it's not the case. Um, so I want to also add with respect to another tool that I use with parents to help them to settle themselves, feel calm, and parent in a way that they feel good about, connect more deeply with their kids. And then the end result being setting their kids up to thrive because of this deeper connection with them. That is nervous system strategies, like regulating your nervous system. It sounds like a big deal, but basically, our nervous system, our brain, our spinal cord, and then there's something called the vagus nerve that travels throughout your entire body. So it's not just your brain and your spinal cord, but it's everywhere. All the neurons, all the nerves throughout your body are impacted. So when we go in, if we're triggered by something somebody said or did because of whatever, a past experience a long, long ago, or even recently, um, we can start to get anxious, nervous, really anxious, or like an even stronger trauma response. So we could get caught up in that and what's happening and just keep, and when we get caught up in that, we just keep feeling the feelings and feeling worse and worse and worse because we don't want them to be there and they're still happening. Or we
Spiral.
can just simply be like, exactly, we can just simply be like, oh yeah, okay, I see what's going on. I'm getting worked up. I'm getting nervous. I'm getting anxious. In anxiety, whatever it is. We'll just notice, right? If we could just notice. And then if you start to do simple tools to settle your nervous system, which I'll explain like one or two real quick. But if you do one or two of these things, you can start to take your nervous system and settle it so that you come back and you feel like you're back in your body. You feel a little more grounded. You feel a little less shaky. You feel safer because we're really feeling unsafe, right? We feel like we're not okay when we're spiraling into this space of anxiety, which is the nervous system just firing quickly. Okay. One thing you can do is you can take your arms or any part of your body, but I'll take my arms and I will just take my fingers and you can just literally start to tickle the insides of your arms, outside of your arms, start to gently tickle or like scratch tickle and do it for a minute, do it for 2 minutes. Just keep doing it and think about what you're doing. Think about how it feels. So you're taking your thoughts off of what was just going on, how you were just feeling, and you're doing this. It literally, something as simple as that, starts to settle your nervous system. In touch to the body helps us feel safer. It brings us back into our body because it feels like we're exiting our body, right? Like when we're getting all worked up. Something else you can do is you take your arms and your hands, and I will press my hands up against the refrigerator and lean into it. So the pressure from my arms into my hands against the surface. It can be on the table, it can be on a wall. I do it in the refrigerator, on the refrigerator, not in. Um, and so the same thing. You're bringing yourself back into your body, and it signals to your nervous system that you're safe, you're okay by feeling that pressure. Do it for a minute, 2 minutes, maybe you need 3 minutes, but it starts to settle you again. When you start using little tools like that, nervous system regulating strategies, tickle inside of your arm, sounds funny, but I've been in the car doing it before, like in traffic. Oh, let me do this. In the past, when I've had to call a teacher and I was nervous what they were going to say when my boys were younger, I'm like, oh, I need to tickle the inside of my arms. I need to like, and one other thing I'll add, you can just sing or hum to yourself. Okay. I've had the shit hit the fan, excuse me to any of your audience that doesn't like swearing, but I have had chaos break out in my house, and I have literally walked out. I start to sing. I'll start singing in the middle of it when I realize, oh my God, I just start to get drawn in and I don't want to be any more a part of this. I'll start to sing. And sometimes I'll walk out the front door, out the side door, and just keep singing. And when my kids were younger, older son right now, I'd be like, what are you doing? I'm okay, you're okay. I'm just singing so I can feel better. And then eventually explained it even better to him. But it was like, what? You know, he needed to know A, I wasn't leaving him. B, he needed to know why she's singing in the middle of this chaos. And then by the way, they start to learn some of these tools for themselves. But these are simple ways to settle your nervous system. So you take that and you couple it with little bits of food shifting in your diet, and you couple that with honoring how you feel, and you start to implement these things and use them regularly, even though they're foreign at first. So you don't have to do them all, right? Just learn one or two new things, bring that in, eventually learn one or two more things, bring that in. Before you know it, you feel so different and you feel amazing when things happen in your house and it's really chaotic. You shift your energy, and sometimes in 5 or 10 minutes, the whole room is changed and everybody's in a different space.
And changing the way you come at the situation really does affect how everybody else
Mhm.
reacts to you.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
weirdest thing.
Absolutely. And our kids trust us more when we're not trying to fix them or yell at them or freak out on them for not doing the things we thought they should do. When we're connecting with them versus coming at them,
Mhm.
the relationship changes. And when the relationship changes, they're more open to either seeking ideas and information from you or at least working with you, working together to get somewhere to help them, right? So it's very different. So with that
You
kid,
get to know them,
yeah, you do. You do. And
which is,
understand them, and you love them always, but there's like a deepening of the love because now you're just more open. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
when they become adults, oh, my kids are adults now, you still have a wonderful relationship with them that
Mhm.
can mature and continue on versus they're stuck in this trauma that you've created for them and they don't have any way to connect with you as a human being.
Mhm.
Often, if we don't know ourselves and we don't have the tools ourselves to understand who we are, then
Mhm.
we really have trouble connecting with our kids or our spouses or other people around us. It's
Yeah.
I know your
I agree.
coaching is geared towards helping parents with their kids, but
Mhm.
it really helps in all your
It
relationships.
does. Yeah. You could take what the work that I do with parents, you could take that and those tools, those strategies, and implement it with regard to anybody else, and it's going to have the same effect. It
Mhm.
does. It has the same effect with your spouse or partner. Like it's just great tools, not just tools, but they're great ways to basically
Life
have things
coping
shift in your
skills.
life. Yeah, and it always comes back to us. We think we need to change the other people, but it really comes back here. Yeah.
It does for sure. So how do you do this? Is it one-on-one and is it specifically towards the parents or do you work with the kids too?
Yeah. So it is one on one. I do one on one private coaching. I have different lengths of time that I work with parents based on what would support what they're trying to achieve for themselves with their kids and themselves and where they're at. Um, and it can be anywhere from 10 months, 6 months, 3 months, and even a little bit smaller. However, occasionally I have group programs, but one-on-one private coaching is what I prefer because I watch people get results faster and I get to know them more so we can really tweak it for what their needs are. Um, and then what was the second part of that question you asked me? You asked me, I think.
Um, did you do it in groups, and did you do it with just the parents, or is it the
Oh,
parents and the kids?
yeah, I knew there was a second part of that question. Yes. So I do it with the parents. Um, Definitely with the parents. For people who are local, I have a certain program that I can get into with them where it's actually called, and I don't mean to distract people here, but it's family coaching. So it's the whole family's involved. But my primary focus is to help parents who have kids whose brains are wired differently support their kids, connect more differently with their kids, and help set their kids up for success. In the family management services that I provide, that's a little bit different. It's that and then some. So I do bring in kids in at this special level, if you will, but online it would be, since it's probably going to be all online people, it would be what we're talking about. So I didn't mean to confuse anybody, but yes,
Yeah, it
parents
makes perfect
primarily.
sense.
Yeah.
And
80% of the time it's parents. Yeah.
and you do offer a free gift to people that visit your website, which
Yes.
is andreaanderson.com. And you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. It's actually AndreaChapmanAnderson.com.
Oh,
And you'll have a link, right? There'll be a link
yes.
somewhere, or should I spell it out? Okay.
Yes. No, I will definitely put a link in there. I'm sorry. I
Yeah. No,
had
that's
it like
okay. Yeah. It's all
I
good.
saw
It's
part of
all
it
good.
on the
No worries. So it's AndreaChapmanAnderson.com. Or we'll change that again. That's my website. If you want the free gift, it's Andrea Chapman Anderson / 4 simple recipes. Again, that's / 4 simple recipes.
and it's
So
the
let me
number
tell you
four.
what that is. What's that?
The number four.
Number 4. Thank you for clarifying. Yes. So what that is you'll get a download, 2 information sheets covering 2 specific foods that help your body and your mind to feel calm. Okay. The second part is you'll get 4 simple recipes that will help you to get more of those specific foods in you so that you can feel calmer. Okay. So I think of it as a great gift because this is part of what you want to do. If you can bring in these simple foods into your diet, you're going to start to see little changes here and there. You're going to be surprised at how you don't yell when you might have yelled before. Just little things start to happen as you bring in different foods into your regular diet. The other thing is these are super simple recipes because I know myself, if it's a complicated recipe and I'm making it for my family, it's not going to happen. I need something I can just make so quick or as quick as possible, and that will make me be more apt to eat those foods or also serve them to my family. Yeah.
They the kinds of foods that you can take with you places and like
Yeah, they are. Well, the 2 that I mentioned that are specifically in this free gift that I talk about, one is super simple to bring with you. The other one you can get somewhere else if you need to. You'll see.
okay.
I want them to kind of go in and have a
I
little
want, yeah, I don't want you
there.
telling us what it is. I want them to go and
Yeah, yeah.
and do this. And I'm gonna go look too. Because I'm super curious, which is the whole point.
Right, right. Absolutely.
Go check it out. The link will be in the show notes around this. Um, this has been an amazing conversation. I have really enjoyed chatting with you, Andrea. What is the one thing that you hope the audience takes away from the conversation today?
Well, I think the main thing is to remember that if you help yourself to feel calm and use just simple little ways to start to do that, you're going to, even just by doing simple little things, start to have a different relationship with your kids. You're going to start to see them differently. You're going to start to interact with them differently. And as a result, you'll have a better relationship with your kids, right? So to think of it as helping yourself be in a different space versus trying to change them. Because we really honestly can't change anybody. We have no true control over anybody else other than ourselves. So this is actually the easier path to get results than it is if we try to change our kids, which I've done. So I know which way works better for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that goes with everybody. It's like
Yep.
you can't change other people,
Yep.
but you can change how you feel about the situation.
Bingo. Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah. Thank you too, Jill. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us for the U World Order Showcase podcast. Remember, if you would like to be featured on this podcast as a life, health, or transformational coach, please visit www.jointheuworldorder.com. We look forward to talking to you next time as we present another life, health, or transformational coach being the change they seek